The order hit like a slap across marble walls. "That's right, get him out." The words belonged to the woman in the navy suit behind the front desk. Arms crossed, lips curved in a smile that wasn't joy but triumph. Two uniformed officers moved forward, each gripping an arm of the black man standing in the hotel lobby. He didn't resist. He didn't shout. He just let their hands close around him as if testing their own courage. Gasps fluttered through the chandelier-lit hall. A businessman lowered his newspaper. A couple paused mid-check-in. Phones appeared in quiet rebellion, raised like mirrors aimed back at power. One guest whispered into her mic, "Are you seeing this? They're dragging someone out of a five-star lobby." The man at the center wore no tie, no polished badge of wealth, just a leather jacket, dark jeans, a presence too steady for the scene unfolding. His eyes were calm, locked not on the guards but on the manager who had ordered him erased. Her voice echoed again, clipped and cold. "You have 20 minutes before I call immigration, or police, or both. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now back to him." His name, though no one in this room knew it yet, carried more weight than every chandelier above their heads. But in this moment he allowed himself the cloak of anonymity, to feel again the sharp edge of bias that never truly vanished. The officers began to move him toward the door. Their hands were firm, practiced, but he walked as if he were leading them. The marble floor caught the sound, 3 sets of footsteps, steady, deliberate. A woman near the counter lifted her phone higher, framing the blonde manager in one corner of the shot. The manager noticed, straightened her collar, and smirked wider as if the camera was her stage. "Policy protects real guests," she announced loudly, ensuring every bystander could hear. "Not walk-ins pretending to be who they're not." The lobby murmured. One man muttered, "But I saw his name on the reservation board." Another answered, "Shh, don't get involved." Fear had its own gravity here. Through it all, the man stayed silent. His stillness was louder than their orders. His gaze followed the front desk, where his credit card and ID still sat on polished wood, untouched, doubted, treated like props in someone else's theater. And yet, he didn't flinch, because while they thought they were escorting out a stranger, what they were really doing was staging the opening act of their own downfall. The officers had him halfway to the door when the sound cut the air sharper than any siren. "Wait, what proof do you even have?" It wasn't him speaking. It was a young man near the elevators, phone raised, voice unsteady but loud enough to ripple across the marble lobby. Every head turned. For a beat, the officers froze. The manager didn't. She pivoted on her heels, arms folded tighter, and declared, "This establishment does not serve frauds, especially not ones who can't prove where their money comes from." Her words weren't whispers. They were weapons. The black man still hadn't said a word. He let her voice fill the hall, let the crowd absorb every syllable dripping with disdain. His silence wasn't weakness, it was a stage being set. Behind the front desk, a clerk whispered to another, "She's going too far." But the manager snapped, "Do your job, or lose it." Fear shut them down instantly. Phones multiplied. Red recording lights dotted the room like sparks before a fire. A woman clutching a suitcase muttered, "I just wanted to check in, but I can't believe this is happening." The officers adjusted their grip, but one of them, taller, younger, hesitated. His eyes darted from the man's calm face to the growing audience. He whispered to his partner, "This doesn't feel right." The partner hissed back, "Orders are orders." That was when the manager took one final step forward, her heels striking marble like a gavel. "Skin like yours doesn't belong in five-star service." The words hung heavy, poisonous, undeniable. Gasps erupted. A child near the seating area asked his mother, "What does she mean?" The mother pulled him close, lips pressed tight. And still the man said nothing. Only his eyes moved, locking on the desk where his ID and black credit card remained, untouched, ignored, evidence waiting to be reclaimed. He inhaled slowly, then finally spoke. Just 5 words, low but resonant. "Bring my order, that's all." It wasn't a plea. It was a command cloaked in patience. The lobby shivered with the contrast. She had screamed, he had whispered, yet his words carried farther. The young man by the elevator raised his phone higher. "Everyone heard that. He asked for service. He's not fighting. He's not shouting. And look how they treat him." The manager's jaw tightened, but her smirk returned like a mask. Escort him outside, now." The officers tugged again, and the scene lurched forward. But the balance of power had already shifted. Not to him, at least not yet. To the witnesses. To the lenses capturing every second. And somewhere in that silence, in that slow walk across the lobby, he let himself remember another marble floor, decades ago. 16 years old, waiting for his parents in a Charlotte hotel. A clerk had told him, "Guests only," and pushed him onto the sidewalk. That memory hadn't faded. It had hardened. Now, as then, the lesson was the same. They wanted him invisible. But invisibility was the one thing he could never grant them. The officers pulled, but he stopped moving. Not by force, by choice. His shoes planted firm against the marble, as if the floor itself recognized him. One officer tugged again, confused. The other leaned close, whispering, "Walk, or we'll make you." That was when he finally reached into his jacket. Not fast, not reckless, just calm. His hand came out holding a phone. He lifted it to his ear, pressed a single button, and spoke one sentence. "Activate the protocol. Record everything." Oh. The words weren't loud, but the lobby shifted. Every phone already raised suddenly felt justified. Every bystander stiffened, sensing a tide turning. On the other end, a voice responded, crisp and immediate. "Understood. Logging all events now. Timestamp started." The manager scoffed, but a flicker of unease cracked her posture. "You think a phone call changes your status here? You're still nobody." He turned his head slightly, gaze steady. "I've been called worse, and every time I've turned it into fuel." Her laugh rang hollow, too sharp, like glass under pressure. "Fuel won't get you a suite, or service, or respect." She looked to the officers. "Remove him." But the taller officer hesitated again, grip loosening. "Ma'am, he hasn't resisted. He hasn't raised his voice. I don't see cause." Her voice snapped like a whip. "Then you don't see clearly. Look at him. He doesn't belong here." The young man by the elevator finally shouted, "He does belong. He booked the suite. I saw the board." Gasps followed. A woman chimed in. "I saw his name too. Carter, wasn't it?" The manager's face drained slightly, but she rallied fast. "Anyone can fake a booking. Anyone can—" The voice on the phone cut through, projected just loud enough for those nearby to hear. "Protocol initialized. Cross-checking ownership documents." The word ownership echoed like a shot. The crowd stiffened. The manager blinked, then barked, "He's bluffing. Don't listen to him." But doubt had already seeded. One clerk shifted uncomfortably, whispering, "What if he's not?" The man still hadn't raised his volume. He only looked at the officers and spoke with the same patience he'd carried since the first insult. "Touch me again, and you'll regret it not because I'll shout, but because you'll realize who you've put your hands on." The shorter officer sneered. "Is that a threat?" "No," he answered, voice cutting low, steady. "It's a fact." Ugh. The lobby's energy transformed. The silence wasn't compliance anymore, it was anticipation. People leaned in, phones recording, breaths held. The manager's smirk faltered. "You're not the one with authority here." He took a single step forward, officers still at his side but suddenly unsure. "That's where you're wrong. Authority isn't loud. It isn't borrowed from a uniform or a desk. It's earned. And I earned this ground beneath your feet long before you tried to erase me from it." A murmur swelled. Someone whispered, "He owns something, doesn't he?" The man let the silence hang, then spoke softly into his phone again. "Move to Phase 2. On the other end, the assistant replied, "Phase 2 confirmed. Internal systems engaged. Their names are already flagged." The taller officer released his grip. The shorter one hesitated, eyes darting between the manager and the growing crowd. And for the first time, the manager's voice cracked. "What are you implying?" He met her gaze at last, eyes calm but merciless. Not implying, declaring. The manager's laugh returned, brittle this time. "Declaring? You really think you can walk into a hotel like this, wave a phone around, and scare us? Please. This is a 5-star establishment, not a playground for fantasies." Her words rippled, but they didn't land the way she expected. The crowd was listening differently now, not with mockery, with calculation. Phones tilted higher, capturing her every syllable. The black man didn't flinch. He angled the phone slightly, his voice calm enough to feel rehearsed. "Confirm acquisition file." The assistant's reply came sharp, efficient. "File pulled. Horizon Grand. Purchase finalized July of last year. Current ownership. Carter Holdings. A hush dropped over the lobby like a heavy curtain. The manager blinked, stammered, Carter Holdings? That can't. He spoke for the first time with weight, not just presence. You wanted proof. There at Island. My name isn't just on your guest board. It's on the deed to the very walls you're standing in. Gasps erupted. The young man by the elevator nearly dropped his phone. The woman with the suitcase whispered, He owns this place? The taller officer stepped back entirely, hands falling away. The shorter one released his grip slowly, eyes darting nervously. The manager's face drained of color. She tried to gather herself, clinging to the fragments of authority left. Even if that were true, you should have presented yourself properly. No one could expect staff to recognize you dressed like that. Her excuse fell flat. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, murmurs rising. One guest said, So service is based on looks now? Another, That's discrimination, plain and simple. The man's voice cut steady, sharp. Exactly. You didn't deny service because I lacked status. You denied me because you didn't think someone with skin like mine could possibly hold it. It was a sentence meant for the room, but it echoed far wider, carried in every phone that recorded. The assistant's voice returned, firm. Phase 2 complete. Manager flagged for misconduct. Staff access already under review. The blonde manager's smirk vanished altogether. Her hands twitched at her sides. This is a misunderstanding. But the evidence was already larger than her denial. Videos were streaming, guests were speaking. The lobby wasn't hers anymore. He lifted his chin, gaze level. You called me an intruder in my own lobby. You tried to erase me in front of witnesses. Now the only thing erased will be your authority. A wave of whispers surged like a tide. One guest clapped once, sharp, before stopping. Another joined, and then another. Soon the sound wasn't whispers anymore, it was applause. The man didn't smile. He didn't need to. His words carried the weight. You're finished, and this is only the beginning. The manager's composure cracked fully. You can't just walk in and fire staff. But before she could finish, the assistant's voice pierced through the phone again, this time loud enough that the nearest cameras captured it. Authorization logged. Termination procedures ready for execution. And with that, the balance shattered completely. The applause didn't stop. It spread like fire, catching velvet, sharp and unstoppable. Guests stood from their seats. Some clapped. Others raised their phones higher, capturing every angle. The lobby, once a place of quiet transactions and hushed greetings, had transformed into a courtroom where truth was the only verdict. The manager tried to shout over it. Enough. All of you, this is inappropriate. This man is not... Her voice cracked. No one was listening. The black man stood perfectly still, phone still in hand, posture unshaken. He hadn't raised his voice once, yet every eye in the room had shifted to him. Behind the desk, one clerk fumbled with the reservation screen, eyes wide. He whispered to his colleague, His name's in the system, not just as a guest, as the owner. The words slipped like a confession, loud enough for 3 nearby guests to hear. The confession spread in seconds. A ripple became a wave. Gasps, murmurs, then pointed stares all directed at the manager. The taller officer backed away completely, hands up. Ma'am, we're not touching him again. This isn't our fight. The shorter one followed reluctantly, muttering, He hasn't done anything wrong anyway. The manager turned pale. She clutched the edge of the desk as if it could anchor her, but her authority was already gone. And then, the phones betrayed her. Screens lit up with live streams, comments flashing in real time. One read, This is happening right now in Seattle. Owner just exposed racism live. Another, She's finished. Whole staff about to lose their jobs. The man finally moved, one step forward, calm as stone. His voice was low, cutting clean through the chaos. You tried to drag me out. Now watch as this hotel drags you down. A clerk gasped. He means it. The assistant's voice returned, steady in his ear. Phase 3 confirmed. Manager's record reviewed 6 prior complaints, all dismissed, majority from women of color. The room inhaled sharply as he repeated it aloud. 6 complaints, buried, ignored, until today. A woman in the crowd shouted, I knew it. I complained last year, nothing happened. Her voice cracked with vindication, tears in her eyes. The manager stumbled, words tumbling out without control. This is being twisted. These are isolated incidents. But her excuses drowned beneath the rising chorus of witnesses. Guests stepped forward, not just recording but speaking. You humiliated him. You lied. We saw it. The lobby was no longer her stage. It was his courtroom. The man's eyes scanned the crowd once, then returned to the manager. You wanted silence. Instead, you created witnesses. Applause broke again, heavier this time. Not polite, powerful. The sound of a verdict delivered. The assistant's voice echoed finality. All access flagged. Security credentials revoked. Termination effective upon your word. He didn't rush. He let her feel the weight of silence pressing in, the humiliation she had tried to script for him folding back on her. Then he spoke, calm as ever. Your word tried to erase me. Mine will erase your career. Effective immediately. You are done here. And the room, every phone, every eye sealed it with thunderous approval. The words struck harder than any shout. Effective immediately, you are done here. Silence clamped down. Not the silence of doubt, but the silence of a verdict no one could appeal. Behind the desk, the reservation clerk stared at his monitor. A sharp beep cut through the lobby. The manager's badge, still clipped neatly to her blazer, flashed red in the system. Locked out. She blinked down at it, disbelief washing over her face. No, this is a glitch. Reset the system. But the clerk didn't move. He whispered, It's not a glitch. It's corporate override. Another beep. The assistant's voice came clear through his phone, deliberate. Lauren Hayes, Kevin Patel, Gregory Vance. All logged. All access revoked. The system has already processed. Gasps broke like glass. Guests turned, watching the staff freeze where they stood. Lauren, the younger clerk, tapped her badge desperately against the scanner at the side of the desk. Nothing. Just the same unforgiving red flash. Kevin muttered under his breath, This can't be real. The black man didn't raise a hand. He didn't need to. His authority pulsed through the lobby like current. You called me an imposter in my own house. Now the locks answer to me, not to you. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some recording closer now, their cameras zooming in on every flicker of panic across the staff's faces. The manager's voice pitched higher, shrill. This is illegal. You can't terminate staff in front of... But she stopped. Because in front of her, on at least 10 screens, live streams scrolled with comments. He owns the building. She's finished. Watch her badge just shut off live. It wasn't just termination. It was exposure. The taller officer, still standing near, finally stepped aside fully. His voice was low but resolute. Ma'am, we're not putting hands on him again. This isn't our place anymore. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. The power she'd relied on, uniforms, procedure, arrogance, was gone. And still he stood calm as ever. You humiliated me in front of witnesses, thinking my silence was weakness. But silence is where power gathers, and now it speaks. Hi. The assistant's voice cut in once more, final. All staff credentials locked, accounts suspended, legal notified, action complete. One by one the staff realized it. No more access, no more power, no way back. The manager staggered a step, clutching the desk like it could anchor her against a storm. But storms don't wait, they consume. The man finally lowered his phone. He looked around the lobby, not at her, not at the broken staff, but at the guests who had seen everything. His words were measured, deliberate. Justice doesn't always come in courtrooms. Sometimes it comes in lobbies like this. Applause thundered, not scattered this time, unified. And with that, the verdict was sealed. The applause swelled until it shook the chandeliers above. Phones weren't just filming anymore, they were broadcasting. Streams pinged live across TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Comment boxes rolled faster than the eyes could read. He owns it. They tried to throw him out of his own hotel. This is justice in real time. Seattle Horizon Grand happening now, share it. Guests who minutes earlier had sat silent were now narrators for thousands online. A travel blogger in the corner whispered into her mic, Viewers, you're watching history. A black CEO humiliated in his own lobby and firing his staff live. Her stream spiked to 20,000 viewers in minutes. The manager tried to speak, voice trembling. You don't understand, this is being misrepresented. But her words drowned in the roar of the crowd. A man with a stroller shouted, We understand perfectly. You profiled him. You lied. Applause slammed down like a gavel. The black man remained steady, phone lowered now, his authority needing no device. He simply stood, and the cameras adjusted to him as though pulled by gravity. In the chaos, a teenage girl near the entrance turned to her mother. "Mom, he never even shouted. He didn't do anything." Her mother nodded, tears forming. That's the point. They saw his skin, not his humanity. And the crowd felt that truth echo in their bones. The assistant's voice came once more, cool and efficient. "Media already notified. Internal audit compiling every word recorded. You don't need to lift a finger." He didn't smile, but the weight in his eyes said enough. This isn't revenge, it's correction. Across the lobby, Kevin slumped into a chair, badge flashing red uselessly. Lauren covered her face, the fight gone from her. The manager remained frozen, mouth open, drowning in the realization that the audience wasn't the staff anymore. It was the world. Screens lit brighter. Notifications pinged. A woman gasped. "Look, number horizon exposed is trending." And in that moment, it was bigger than one lobby. Bigger than one man. The black man raised his head, his words directed not just at those in the room, but those far beyond it. To everyone watching, dignity isn't granted by uniforms or titles. It's inherent. And today you've seen what happens when it's denied. The lobby erupted again, louder than before. Not just applause, cheers, chants. A tide of vindication that swept the marble hall clean of its old order. And still he stood calm, as if he had orchestrated not chaos, but clarity. For the staff, it was the end. For the witnesses, it was revelation. For the world tuning in, it was proof. Silence and patience could topple arrogance louder than any shout. The man turned once toward the front doors, the same doors they had tried to drag him through minutes earlier. He didn't leave. He simply looked at them, then back to the crowd as if to say, "This space is mine, and it always was." The thunder of applause softened into murmurs, but the energy didn't fade. It shifted into courage. Near the concierge desk, a young woman in a navy vest hesitated. She had been silent for too long, but her hands trembled now as she stepped forward. Her name tag read, Elena Ruiz. Her voice cracked at first, but she steadied it. "I need to say something." The lobby quieted. Cameras turned. The manager's head snapped toward her, eyes flashing fury. "Not a word, Elena." But Elena didn't back down. She drew a breath that seemed to weigh her whole career. "I saw his reservation this morning. Penthouse suite. VIP tag. It was valid." A shock rippled through the guests. Someone whispered, "She's confirming it." Another raised their phone higher. The manager's face went pale. "Elena, stop now or you're out of a job." Elena lifted her chin. "Then fire me, but I won't lie for you anymore." Gasps scattered. The crowd responded with applause again, not thunderous this time, but sharp, deliberate approval of truth. The black man's eyes shifted toward her, calm and grateful, but he said nothing. He didn't need to. Her courage carried itself. Then another voice rose, an older woman near the lounge chairs, gray hair tied back neatly. She clutched her phone and spoke loud enough for all to hear. "This isn't the first time. Last year, I complained about being treated differently here. Nothing changed. Now I know why." The lobby hummed with vindication. From the back, a man in a suit stepped forward, pointing at the manager. "I watched him show ID and a card. You dismissed it. That's theft and discrimination." The manager stuttered, her hands shaking. "You're twisting facts. You don't understand how policy works." But the crowd cut her off. Policy doesn't tear up a guest's ID. Policy doesn't call cops on skin color. Policy doesn't delete a name from the system. Every witness was speaking now, a chorus of small truths building into a wall of undeniable evidence. The assistant's voice came sharp in the black man's ear. "Statements logged. Every testimony saved. You've got witnesses on record." He nodded once, then finally addressed the crowd. His tone was calm, almost gentle, but each word landed like a hammer. "Thank you for speaking. You didn't have to, but you did. And that's how change starts, not in boardrooms, in moments like this." Elena's voice shook but carried, "You don't have to thank us. We're just tired of being silent." The room erupted in agreement, murmurs, nods, applause. Silence had been broken, and now it couldn't be stitched back together. The manager collapsed into a chair behind the desk, her authority gone, her defenses shredded not just by one man's revelation, but by a community choosing truth over comfort. The black man looked at her one last time. You see, it was never just me. It was everyone you dismissed, and today they answered back. The lobby roared. The applause faded into a heavy stillness, all eyes fixed on the woman behind the desk. She sat hunched, blazer wrinkled, badge useless, but her pride refused to die quietly. Her lips twisted into a bitter sneer. You all think this changes anything? Look at him, dressed like that, talking like that. He doesn't belong in five-star spaces, never has, never will. The words cracked the room. Gasps shot through the crowd like sparks. A father near the check-in line shielded his daughter's ears, shaking his head in disbelief, still saying it, after everything. Elena Ruiz, still standing tall near the concierge podium, snapped back. You've lost all credibility. Stop embarrassing yourself. But the manager leaned forward, gripping the desk with white-knuckled fury. Her voice dropped into venom. No matter what papers he waves, no matter what he claims to own, people like him will always be out of place here. The insult hung in the air, poisonous, undeniable. Phones tilted closer, lenses zooming in. This wasn't just discrimination anymore, it was confession. The black man didn't move at first. He let her words echo, let them stain the lobby in front of dozens of witnesses and thousands online. His stillness pulled the silence taut until the room itself seemed to hold its breath. Then he spoke, each word deliberate, resonant. Out of place? He stepped forward slowly, eyes locked on hers. The officers, the clerks, the crowd parted without a word, giving him space like he carried gravity itself. I built places like this. I bought places like this. And I own this one. The only person out of place. He paused, letting the tension sharpen like a blade. Is you. The lobby erupted shouts. Cheers. A wave of clapping that rattled the marble floor. The manager's face blanched, her smirk crumbling into a mask of fear. She stammered, You can't just... The assistant's voice pierced the moment, clear in his ear but loud enough to carry. Audit complete. Legal advised immediate removal. Waiting for your word. He lifted his phone, gaze never leaving hers. Log her words, every last one, then lock her out permanently. The assistant confirmed, done. Her badge buzzed red again, this time with a harsh tone that made the crowd flinch. Her monitor went black. Access gone. Position gone. Power gone. Gasps turned into cheers. Guests clapped harder, some chanting his name, others repeating the words he'd just delivered. Out of place. Out of place. The man lowered his phone, his calm more cutting than rage. You called me a fraud in a lobby I own. You called me out of place in a space I built. That was your last mistake. The manager collapsed into her chair, head in her hands, drowned by the weight of her own words. And the crowd, every phone, every witness sealed her downfall with thunderous applause. The lobby was no longer a lobby. It was a stadium, and the crowd had chosen its champion. Applause crashed against the marble, rolling like thunder. Guests rose from their chairs, some clapping, some chanting. Phones swayed above heads like torches, capturing the scene from every possible angle. On screen after screen, comments poured in. This is the moment. Seattle, you're witnessing history. He owned her with just words. The hashtag number, out of place, exploded across feeds, flipping her insult into a rallying cry. Within minutes, it was trending nationally. The manager sat slumped behind the desk, her shoulders curled inward, badge flashing red in shameful rhythm. She tried to speak, to salvage something, anything. You're all misled, this is a misunderstanding. But her voice barely carried past the first row of guests. The roar of approval drowned her. Elena Ruiz stood tall, voice ringing above the chaos. No misunderstanding. We all saw it. We all heard it. Her declaration was met with another wave of applause. The younger clerk, Kevin, buried his face in his hands. His badge, too, had turned red, useless. Lauren, pale and shaking, whispered, We're done. All of us. The black man hadn't moved. He stood in the center of the storm, composed, as if he'd expected this crescendo. His voice finally rose not loud, but steady enough to cut through. She said I was out of place. Tell me, does anyone here believe that? No! A dozen voices shouted back. Phones caught it. The denial multiplied online. Thousands, then tens of thousands. One guest near the front, tears streaking her cheeks, called out, You belong here more than any of us. This is yours. The words struck harder than any chant. The crowd erupted again, unified, the sound shaking the very air. The assistant's voice slid through his phone, sharp and precise. Social feeds confirm. Viral reach at 1.2 million and climbing. Documentation locked. The board has already acknowledged. The manager groaned, realizing the futility. Her eyes darted around, searching for allies, for escape. There were none. The staff she commanded were silent, stripped of authority. The officers who once gripped his arms now stood at ease, no longer her enforcers. And still the crowd pressed forward not to threaten, but to witness. Phones framed her downfall, each second archived forever. The man's gaze swept across the mall, measured, deliberate. This moment doesn't end here. It will live far beyond this lobby, and every person watching will know exactly what happens when dignity is denied. The applause surged to its peak. Some guests whistled, some shouted his name, others repeated the chant now etched into digital memory. Out of place? Out of place? The manager lowered her head, defeated. What she had tried to erase had become the very thing the world would never forget. The chants ebbed into silence, the kind that carries weight. All eyes turned back to him, waiting. The manager's face was pale, her lips trembling as if a single excuse could undo everything. It couldn't. The black man lifted his phone one final time. His voice was even, almost quiet, but it cut like steel. Authorization. Terminate all flagged staff. Effective immediately. The assistant's reply came sharp, clinical. Confirmed. Gregory Vance, Lauren Hayes, Kevin Patel employment terminated. Access revoked. Logged for legal audit. 3 sharp tones echoed from the desk scanners. Red lights pulsed. Badges died in their holders. Gasps rippled through the lobby. Guests leaned in, capturing every blink, every flinch. Elena Ruiz whispered to a woman beside her, "It's real. They're gone." Kevin dropped his badge to the marble floor, the clatter ringing hollow. Lauren backed into the wall, eyes wide, shaking. Gregory, the manager, stared at his dead ID as though willing it back to life. But the system had spoken. The man stepped closer, gaze fixed on Gregory. His words were measured, final. "You tore at my dignity in a lobby I own. Today, this hotel tears your name from its walls. You are finished." Gregory's breath hitched, his voice breaking. You can't humiliate me like this." But the crowd's reaction silenced him. Applause, louder than ever, sealing his fate. The man turned to the guests, his tone shifting from judgment to clarity. "Remember this. Power built on prejudice will always collapse. Sometimes quietly, sometimes like today." Phones captured every syllable. The moment wasn't just an ending, it was documentation, an unerasable record. And with that, the verdict was complete. The applause swelled, not just in the lobby but across a digital sea. Phones everywhere streamed the same image. A man once dragged toward the door, now standing immovable at the center of his own domain. The terminated staff slumped in silence, their badges lifeless on marble. Gregory's head hung low. Lauren stared at the floor. Kevin sat frozen, lips parted but voiceless. Their downfall was complete, not behind closed doors, but under the full light of witnesses. Elena Ruiz stepped forward once more, her voice steady now. "This is how it should have been all along. Guests respected, dignity honored." Applause answered her courage. The black man inclined his head toward her, a gesture of acknowledgement, then turned to the wider crowd. His voice carried, calm but resonant, meant for the room and every screen beyond it. "Remember what you saw today. Justice doesn't always wear robes or sit on benches. Sometimes it walks in quietly, waits, and reveals itself at the right moment. You don't need to shout to be heard. You just need to stand firm." A woman in the front row whispered to her friend, "That line alone, that's the one people will remember." And they would, because the chant that had started as mockery out of place now belonged to him, transformed into triumph. Online, it burned as a banner, reshaped into power. He took one final look at the desk where his ID and black card still rested, untouched, disrespected. He stepped forward, picked them up, and slid them into his pocket. Simple, certain, symbolic. Then he turned to the doors they had once tried to drag him through, not as an exile, as the owner, the master of the ground beneath his feet. He didn't storm out, he didn't linger for applause. He simply walked with quiet certainty, leaving the ruined authority behind him. The crowd parted, not out of fear, but respect. Phones stayed raised, but the applause softened into reverent silence, the kind reserved for witnessing something bigger than spectacle. As the doors opened wide and he stepped into daylight, his words lingered like a verdict carved into stone. You denied me service over my skin. Now the world knows. That was your last mistake. Ezine, the doors closed behind him, but the echo remained across the lobby, across the city, across every screen that carried the story. And from that moment forward, no one would forget who truly belonged.